Today, we're going to dig into the work of Michelle Rosenberg to uncover a skill that is, frankly, a superpower: how to spot flawed logic and steer any conversation back to a place of clarity.
We have all been there, right? Someone hits you with a rapid-fire argument just like this. Each piece sounds kind of plausible on its own, but before you can even process the first point, they're already on to the third. You're left totally on the back foot.
And then you're stuck with that nagging feeling. You know the one I'm talking about. You just sense the logic is off, but you can't quite put your finger on why. You actually start to question yourself, not because your idea is weak, but because the argument against it is specifically designed to be deceptive.
And this gets right to the heart of the problem. You see, flawed arguments aren't always outright lies. A lot of the time, they're more like a movie set. It's this convincing facade, but there's nothing solid behind it. They are illusions, and they're masterfully built to give the impression of being true by tapping right into our brain's shortcuts.
Now, these illusions actually have a name. They're called sophisms. A sophism is an argument that mimics the structure of sound logic, but, well, it bends or breaks the rules. It's really just a trick of persuasion all dressed up as a piece of real reasoning.
Right, it's an illusion of reasoning. Think of a good argument as a chain. A sophism is when one of the links in that chain looks solid, but it's actually made of glass. So the chain seems complete, but that connection? It's just an illusion. The key isn't to challenge every single fact, but to spot that one weak link. That's how you see behind the curtain.
So how do we go from being a target of these illusions to seeing them clearly? Well, Michelle Rosenberg lays out this simple, really powerful three-step path. First, you understand, then you recognize, and finally, you respond. Let's walk through it.
Okay, step one. First, we have to understand our own minds. Look, our brains are efficiency machines. To get through a super complex world, they take shortcuts. And these shortcuts are essential, but they also create blind spots. And sophisms? They are engineered to find and exploit those exact blind spots.
And just how many of these traps are out there? In his work, Rosenberg identifies 57 distinct types. And that's not just some random number. It's a whole catalog of predictable, repeatable ways our thinking can be manipulated by arguments that only seem logical. So once we get that these traps exist, how do we actually spot them in the wild? That brings us to step 2, recognize. Learning to identify a sophism as it's happening, it's like being able to name the game someone is playing. It instantly changes your perspective and gives you this incredible clarity. Let's just look at a few common examples. You've got the ad hominem, which is when they attack you instead of your argument. You lack the experience. Then there's the straw man, where they twist your position into something totally absurd and easy to attack. And of course, the classic false dilemma, which traps you by saying there are only two extreme options. Once you can put a name to them, you start hearing them everywhere.
And that brings us to the final, and honestly the most empowering step, responding. This isn't about winning an argument or getting confrontational. No, it's about skillfully guiding the conversation back to a place of clarity and sound reasoning.
Just think about the shift this creates. Instead of feeling that self-doubt creep in, you can expose the flawed logic. Instead of just falling silent, you can reframe the entire conversation. And instead of making some unnecessary concession, you can actually take control of where the dialogue is going.
So what are your options, really? The key is to respond, not just react. First, you can try to diffuse it. Ask a simple clarifying question that gently exposes the weak logic. Or you could reframe the conversation, pulling the focus away from the distraction and back to the real issue. And sometimes, you might need to gently confront the flawed reasoning head-on. The goal is never to win a fight. It's just to bring the conversation back to solid ground. What this all leads to, really, is a form of freedom. I mean it. In a world just saturated with persuasion, where pretty much everyone is trying to influence how we think, the ability to see arguments for what they actually are, to separate the sound logic from the illusion, that is a powerful act of intellectual independence.
So the next time you feel that something is just off in a conversation, pause for a second. It might not be you. It might be the logic itself. And now you've got the framework to understand, recognize, and respond. The only question is, how many of these flawed arguments are you going to start noticing tomorrow? All of this comes from the work of Michelle Rosenberg.